It was only reserved for them, and then only reserved for the worst of criminals. We talk about the death penalty being cruel and unusual punishment. This was the death penalty in the worst way. There wasn't anything like this. There wasn't anything else that we can think of today, because what would happen is this death would serve as an example to the people of the futility of defying the Roman government. Most of the time, as we talk about the cross, we look at it and we don't realize that this was meant to be a way of dying over several days. Nobody died the first day on a cross. It wasn't meant to be that way. In fact, the truth of the matter is that it was meant to be an example, and they would leave them on those crosses, and those men, and it was always men, women were not crucified, it was always men, those men would hang there, and from the cross, the crosses, they would speak or they would say something. From their crosses, they would have the mobs go by, and so it was always intended to be a multiple day event where they would be hanging there as an example, as a witness. Don't mess with the Roman government. And there was Jesus that day, and he was put on a cross along with two hardened criminals. He was put in the middle of the two of them. Most of the time as we talk about the cross, we picture the terribleness of that scene. We speak of the nails driven into his hands and his feet, and we see him hanging there suspended between heaven and earth as the crowd passes by laughing and mocking at him. Mark 15:30 says, likewise, the chief priests also, mocking among themselves with the scribes, said, he saved others, himself he cannot save. Let the Christ, the King of Israel, descend now from the cross, that we may see and believe. Even those who were crucified with him also reviled him, it says. When we think of that moment in time, we often think of what it must have been like for Jesus to be in such agony and to be alone for the very first time. It was on the cross that we come to that point where it says that God turned his face from him. But remarkably, Jesus never was alone. Somebody said, well, wait a minute. He was all by himself. When the Father turned... But you see, there were some others that were there that did not leave, that did not run away. 4 women and 1 man. We're told in the Gospels that 4 women and 1 man stayed. They didn't leave. They saw the entire thing. John 19:25 says, now there stood by the cross of Jesus his mother and his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. When Jesus therefore saw his mother and the disciple whom he loved standing by, he said to his mother, woman, behold your son. And then he said to the disciple, behold your mother. And from that hour, that disciple took her to his own home. Now let me tell you something. It's always been a dangerous thing to be associated with a man whom the Roman government believed to be so dangerous a criminal that he deserved a cross. The presence of these women and this man was not due to the fact that they were so unimportant that no one would notice them. It was dangerous for the women, and it could have meant death for John to be there at the foot of the cross. When they stayed there at the foot of the cross, they clearly identified themselves with Jesus. So why were they there? Why put their lives on the line for a dying man? Why would you do that? There's a beautiful old hymn that we used to sing that just simply talks about Jesus, keep me near the cross. But I wonder if I'd have wanted to have been near that cross that day. Would you have wanted to be near the cross that day? Today, the crosses that we have are beautiful. That's a beautiful cross. When we hadn't yet built this building, we'd put, the very first thing that we did on this property was we put a cross on top of that hill. And many of you have seen that cross. We put a cross on top of that hill for a reason. And that was, we wanted to make a declaration that Jesus is king over our lives and over this region of northern Michigan. That's what we wanted to do. So we went to the highest place that we had, and we put a cross there. And we set it up. We had a difficult time during the first months of having the cross up there because we wanted lights on it, so we put lights on the cross, or pointing toward the cross, and then the lights would keep getting broke out. And so Pastor Joe, bless him, he said, "What do we do, Pastor?" I said, "We keep fixing it." So he'd go up there and fix it. He fixed it and fixed it and fixed it. He replaced light bulb after light bulb after light bulb. People would do whatever they could. And I'm like going, what in the world is going on? How come somebody doesn't want a cross on this hill? Did you know there was even one day somebody tried to set that cross on fire? It's true. I thought, wow, this is a spiritual thing. It's bigger than we think. They were unsuccessful setting it on fire. I'm not even sure what in the world they thought was going to cause it to burn, but they couldn't get it to burn, and so they were unsuccessful with that. But Joe just go up there and he'd replace the lights. Finally, after a while, nobody messed with the cross. I'll never forget, several years went by. We didn't have any problems with the cross. Several years went by, and we were down in the neighborhood one day, and we were passing out food and literature, inviting children to come to church. And this guy said, I owe you an apology. I said, why? He said, you know how those lights used to get busted out on your cross? I said, yeah. He said, I was the one that was doing it. He said, I owe you an apology. I should have said, you owe me hundreds of dollars too, but you know, that's what I should have said. But he said, I owe you an apology. And he said, I can tell you this much. He said, when you guys put that cross up there, he said, I can tell you, I despised it. He said, I hated that cross. Hated it. I thought to myself, what inside of him caused him to be so adamantly opposed to a piece of wood shaped like that? What in him caused him to be so angry about it? Here's what he said. It was really interesting because he said, I just want you to know, he says, I love that cross now. He said, I work third shift, and he says, I come home, and he said, it's still dark in the morning when I come home most of the time. He said, I just like to stand by my truck and smoke a cigarette and look at that cross. His heart was so, he said, I just love that cross. I said, good. But you see, that cross is really pretty. Shortly after we put it up there was a night where there was a storm that came in the Cadillac. It was kind of an interesting thing. There was a storm, and when the storm came, there was a rainbow that came. And somebody called us up and said, there's a rainbow over the cross. And so my wife and I, we got in our car and we started looking for the rainbow, and we saw the rainbow, and we took a photograph of it. And what was really cool is it wasn't a single rainbow, it was actually a double rainbow. And we took this photograph of the rainbow, and then I went up and I stood next to the cross, and it was the coolest thing. I really don't know that I've ever seen anything quite like it, because I looked out there, and there in front of me, I could see both ends of the rainbow. I've never seen both ends of a rainbow before. And one end was right where you're sitting. Right here. We didn't build this building here because that's where the rainbow ended, but if you think it's a pot of gold here, that's probably why. I'm just kidding. But the thing about it is in the other end was in the woods on to the south, and so we just thought that was really cool. And I said, Lord, I said, you know, are you trying to tell us something? And that's when I really felt like, you know, and I don't hear God talk to me in an audible voice. You know, I've never, you know, I've heard people say, I heard God say this and this, and I've never heard God talk in an audible voice. But I can tell you this much. I said, I was just praying inside myself, and I said, Lord, what does this mean? Does it mean something? And I'll never forget these words coming into my heart. This will be a place where the promises of God, you see, that's what a rainbow represents, is the promise of God. He said, this will be a place where the promises of God meet the provision of the cross, what Jesus paid for on the cross. And so you know, we just started telling that story. And we had a lady in our church that was taking stained glass, and she told her teacher, 69-year-old lady from Houghton Lake, she told her teacher about the cross. And her teacher came to church one Sunday. And afterwards she said this. She said, if you'll buy the glass, I will build you a mural with that cross and rainbow. And I said, well, we'll need a pretty big one. She made a pretty big one. Back here a year ago, she came back and visited us. 79 now. Still going strong. Still doing great things. But you see, that cross is beautiful. But the cross that Jesus died on, there wasn't anything beautiful about it. Nothing. It has now become, the cross has become a symbol of Christianity. But then it was a symbol of being a criminal. Some of you have had people along the way attack your reputation. How many of you know that day Jesus' reputation wasn't too good? Hello? But his character, that was rock solid. Let me tell you something. If you take care of your character, God will take care of your reputation. Because now the cross is considered to be a precious thing to each of us who know Jesus. It's an amazing thing. That day there were some people that stayed near the cross. But would we have dared to climb that hill and stand by him as he died? Or would we have been where most of the disciples were, hiding, fearful that we too might be arrested and crucified along with him? 4 brave women and 1 man were there. But who were they? Why would they stay? Well, the first one is Mary, the wife of Clopas, and we know little about her except for her son's name was James the Less. I'm not sure that's a great name. I would never name one of my kids the Less, but that's what she had named her son. But we do know something about the others, and when you look at them, you begin to realize, of course, Mary was there. The mother of Jesus was there, and we know her story well. We know the angel appeared unto her and told her that she would be the mother of God's Son, the promised Messiah. We know of his miraculous birth and the amazing events that accompanied it as God protected and provided for his son. And we're told that Mary treasured all the things that she'd ever been told about her son in her heart. She must have looked forward to the day when her son would proclaim himself to be the long-awaited Messiah, the Savior of Israel, and then usher in the great and wonderful day of the Lord that every Jew longed for.